What is up, everyone? Nathan coming at you with a quick tier list video. We are 3 days, I think, into the Scarlet and Violet Pokemon home release. It's been crazy. We've seen power creep like nothing else before. It kind of reminds me of when the Crown Tundra DLC came out last generation, and the council did a similar strategy of like, we're pretty sure all these Pokemon like Naganadel and Genesect, and at the time they thought Blaziken are broken. We'll just throw them on OU, see how they work, and we can sort it all out by quick banning after the fact. It's gonna be a week of chaos, it's gonna be a week of fun, it's gonna be a week of getting swept by some of the broken, like crazy bullshit you don't want to, but that's fine, right? At the end of the day, like we'll just for sure verify that stuff is too much. And the good news is stuff like Blaziken, which we just thought like, yeah, of course Blaziken to be broken at that point. Speed boost is the best, like, no, like at the time I thought it was like, I was rolling my eyes. I thought, okay, I get these other Pokemon. Blaziken, come on, it's so broken. And here we are, you know, several years later going, yeah, in retrospect, that was a great decision because it wasn't too broken, it was too frail. Anyways, we're in a similar spot. We just saw Regieleki get banned. If you saw my stream that I did on the first day of the release, I did a bit of a mini day one tier list, which was hilarious because it's already been super inaccurate since then. And this isn't quite a follow-up to that. This is more so just talking about the likelihood of things getting banned, which might seem similar to a tier list in the end, and I guess functionally might be a little bit, but I'll explain why a little bit differently as we go down the road. First off, these are Pokemon that I just don't really see a world where they do get banned. They're all fine, but there's just not like any precedent for any of them really getting banned whatsoever, any suggestion like at all. Maybe there's a 1.001% chance that, you know, landorus-therian does or something, but it's like a less than 1% chance. So I'm not even gonna waste time talking about it here. Like, you know, and like, this is why it's not a tier list, right? Volcanion is a great Pokemon. I think it's probably gonna end up in OU when all is said and done here, but I just don't see a world where it's banned personally. And speaking of which, we've already seen one of these Pokemon be banned, Regieleki. I think most people probably know it's been litigated a lot on why this Pokemon was banned. There's a lot of confusion, including for myself, for those who haven't played, like with it in with terrestrialization. Hold on, what makes it so broken? It was fine last generation. Well, once again, that's the reason I kind of bring up Crown Tundra, right? Because in the first couple of weeks of Crown Tundra, this, again, all that crazy shit I mentioned, Regieleki was the #1 menace, because if you didn't have a ground type on your team, it was sweeping you. It just was. It doesn't matter if you had a counter, it was going to volt switch all over you. And if it's not the case as much anymore, but back then you could get up rising voltage in electric terrain, and that, like, you're done. You're done. There's no counter. It's like Ursaluna now. There is no counter unless it's a full-on immunity, right? But that's the huge caveat, of course, is it's ground. Any ground immune Pokemon means that it's going to be completely fine. You're not even shrugging this thing because it's such a limited move pool. Terra Ice, of course, changes all that. Means that it can annihilate most ice Pokemon. You know, even a, you know, Landorus is the #1, like, because it's 4 times weak, of course, but even a super bulky like Ursaluna is taking like almost 90% from a Life Orb Regieleki, let alone a Specs one. So there's just not really any world where it happens. You can't revenge kill it because it's so fast. It's faster than like a fast Scarfer, let alone like, you know, a regular speed Scarfer. And even if you go to a neutral Pokemon with really high Spadef, like a Heatran or a Slowking Galar, well, again, you're getting like 35% off a Volt Switch off of you, which is absurd damage. Like, you can only do that a couple of times, but just immediately pivot right off of you and go to a better wall breaker, i.e. Ursaluna, and then just claim their kill, right? So it's just, again, I think I tweeted this out. I didn't even want to play the metagame until I knew this was banned. I had some day 2 thoughts. I thought, this is good, this is bad. I know that there's a, you know, a Regieleki ban coming down the pipeline. I'm literally going to stop playing until it happens because it was so insufferable. Even using it, like, it was just, anyways, we don't need to talk about it anymore. It was crazy. Terra Ice, Bolt Beam, who knew it was good? Anyways, next we're going to talk about Pokemon where there's a world where they get banned. You know, if these are the sub 1% chance, these are the 1% chance. Once again, this is day 3 of the metagame. I'm not going to pretend that I have future vision or I have an excellent insight into the metagame because no one does. And if someone did, it wouldn't be me, that's for sure. But like, is there a world where these Pokemon could possibly be ban worthy? And I will throw Landorus on there. Yes, like maybe. I'm extremely skeptical that these Pokemon would ever be banned. And I'm actually going to throw Landorus on here too, just because Landorus' move pool is very thin. Like, maybe there's a chance Terra Flying pops off for him and it makes him work in a way he couldn't before. But I think its best thing going for it right now is ground flying dual typing. I was really low, in fact, on Landorus on release. I've come around a lot more, honestly. I do think it's still a really solid pivot with Rocky Helmet and just being a solid defensive mon. I was Day one, not surprised I was wrong. So I think it's still a good mod, but I don't really see a world where it gets banned right now. With losing all the, if you don't know what happened to it, lost knockoff, lost oh, what's that one? Superpowered, not too important, but I had to remember it. Knockoff, superpowered, toxic defog. So right there, that's its entire supportive move pool. Like the only thing more gutting you could take from it would be U-turn at that point. So if you're just a bulky pivot coming in, you're not defogging, you're not doing much utility in terms of crippling them without their item or status. You're really just coming in to be a wall for a wall sake, which is fine, but it's just a lot more limited. And then we'll talk about these ones that I think are a little bit more likely. And this is going to be surprising to a lot of people, but I guess I'll get this out of the way. I'm also really low on Zapdos and these other electric flying types, but there's a Zapdos and maybe Zapdos is in the There's a World category. I don't know. But just to illustrate the idea, it's kind of Regieleki Mini. These are Pokemon with extreme offense on their side. And what balances them is that every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got a ground type on their team. It can completely just like shut it down. Zapdos was good for a while because it can mix that up with like a Hurricane. That was big, like that was landorus-therian's biggest problem for a long time was like if a ground type comes in, you're forced to use moves like Sludge Wave or Focus Blast. Grass Knot sometimes work depending on the matchup, right? Terra Ice kind of eliminates all those problems. And if a Pokemon comes in that is like a good answer to Terra Ice, you're eating the fattest Volt Switch of your life off 145 base special attack, right? So yeah, that's kind of, I think we're going to see these two kind of become a mini Regieleki. I think right now landorus-therian is the more threatening of the two, honestly, just because of the massive special attack. It has a similar effect to Regieleki, where even if you have a neutral Pokemon in, the Volt Switch is doing a lot of damage, and even then they get a good pivot in. I will fully admit I've really never played many games against these two. This is purely based off of just shit I've heard online. So I just think there's a world where these Pokemon, and it kind of leads to a conversation, of course, where if we're banning freaking Zapdos off of because Terra Ice is too good, then we're really at a point where Terrestrialization has become way too overpowered and we're like kind of panicking. It's also worth noting that these Pokemon are also really good for no reason, that they inspire a lot of Terrestrializations from their opponents. What I mean by that is with Regieleki, if I went Terra Ice on my opponent, a lot of the time you'd be forced to use a counter that was like a Volt Absorb Pokemon who Terras into Terra Water, Terra Steel or something, right? Or, you know, maybe you'd have a Landorus in and you knew they were going to Terra Ice, so you would Terra Water instead to eat that and then Earthquake on them and let these gross 50-50s when they knew that you could do that and you knew that they knew, like, ugh, it was a horrible situation. But anyways, the point is it inspired a lot of Terrestrializations too, so you're burning assets from your opponent just by existing, right? So that's where these two kind of come in common to me. Again, I'm still really low on Zapdos. Same sort of conversation as Landorus, and losing Defog and Toxic. It just feels like this Pokemon like is just there to be a wall for a wall's sake. So it's just a defensive pivot, in which case there's like better Pokemon I would use if that's the case. But I'll fully admit, just like the prevalence of Terra Ice, like again, if maybe I should make this like maybe I should be using percentages next to these things, and this is like sub 1%, this is like 1%, and this is like 3% if I'm being honest. So keep that in mind. Like you're going to see bans next to the word Zapdos and lose your mind. I don't see a world where it happens, but I'm just like referring to this world we're in right now where Terra Ice and Electric combination is really scary. Next, let's talk about some other ridiculous Pokemon. Magearna, like I bet if I waited like 4 hours on this video, then Magearna would be up here. One of the Pokemon I think going into this process we were all most certain would be ban worthy at the end of the day. I think the one that we were both like, okay, yeah, like it's Magearna. It's a Fairy Steel typing. It's a meta game where there's so many dark attackers. It's like its typing is more coveted and more valuable now than ever. Just look at Tinkaton's usage. Its Shift Gear sets are as disgusting, and like Shift Gear, Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, Stored Power, those sets are as threatening and evil as ever. Perhaps more so now that you can Terrestrialization to deal with certain counters. Assault Vest, it's a great wall. Like, and if you want to talk about walls that we saw to Regieleki early on, Terra Ground, Magearna saw a little bit of usage there at the beginning. But even just like, I think you could get rid of all of that. You could literally just remove Calm, Shift Gear and Stored Power from this Pokemon. It would still like probably be in the conversation. just with the utility of Specs Floor Cannon, Terra Fairy. No answers. Sorry. Actually, Heat Rain's in. There's an answer now. That's good timing. But like, I think that alone kind of puts Magearna in this conversation, and it is now number one in my when I see it in the team preview Pokemon with Regieleki gone. Next, let's talk about Zamazenta Crowned. I was really high on it going in just because the stats are ridiculous. I think a lot of people just like look at it and like the scope of it, and you go, holy shit, look at this freaking idiot Pokemon. What are we doing fighting against this? It is actually very reminiscent, in my opinion, to Kyurem Black that we saw in overuse for a long time until it got access to Dragon Dance and Icicle Spear. It kind of reminds me of that, where it's just this very one-known Pokemon. Its flaws are kind of obvious. I will say that I think Zamazenta has the edge just because its defensive typing is so good. Whereas like just Stealth Rocks was the wall to Kyurem Black at the end of the day. There's no heavy duty boots for most of its generations. I think actually once it got heavy duty boots, that wasn't the reason why it was banned, but that was the generation that got banned if I remember correctly. So yeah. So it's not its difficulties are much more different than Kyurem Black's were, but it is very reminiscent for me just because it's just this outrageous statted to hell Pokemon that just always gets some work done because its bulk is so crazy and its offense is pretty high too. So like, even if it's the worst matchup possible for Zamazenta, which is not true, I shouldn't say that. In most games, you can just go in and just click body press and you're gonna be okay. But what I just cut myself off by there by saying is body press is kind of its bread and butter. Behemoth Bash is an excellent dual coverage to add to it. So most of the time, if you have a good like fighting type answer on your team, Zamazenta is gonna be pretty limited. I saw Finchinator use a term to describe it as cheesy, and it kind of clicked in my brain. It's like, yeah, actually, it kind of is. Where like when it works, bam, like it's kind of a matchup fish. Like once again talking about Crown Tundra Regieleki, when they don't have a ground type, you are killing it. You're winning the game. When they don't have a fighting type answer, woo, we're partying. It's sick. But oh shit, is that a slow bro? Like, not there's a lot of slow bro usage right now, but oh shit, is that a slow bro? Okay, GG. Like, it's just coming in every time, and it's a no-brainer. Has no pivoting moves, has very little utility. This thing had recover be disgusting, it does not. So it just kind of this weird one-note Pokemon. I still think ultimately, like, this might be a Pokemon we see in like 2 months get banned. It's probably the least problematic of the Pokemon I'm saying that I think will be banned. But it's still just like outrageous and really strong. And I think it's probably going to lead to it. We may be at a point in a couple months where we're looking at it and being like, okay, it's really exhausting having to have a fighting type counter on your team every time. Which is kind of stupid because you probably should to begin with. But yeah, let's ban it. We might be in that position. So I'm kind of like, I've seen a lot of people say this thing should be OU. I'm kind of like 65-35 on it getting banned, I think. But that's a big one. I honestly, I find the whole Zamazenta thing kind of confusing. No better reason for that than Zama Uncrowned. So when I did my tier list yesterday, I wouldn't really give it much thought. I was just like, oh, like, whatever. It's worse. It's like its stats are worse. I just kind of threw it in the tier list. Totally got like crushed for that. Rightfully so, because this is the far better Pokemon of the two. Its offensive problems becomes much less like one-dimensional offensively once you can give it an item Choice Band. Its defenses are like, if the difference between these two is defenses, like this thing's got more than enough defense. Nobody's looking at this and going, oh, I wish it had more defense. Oh, it's just not, oh, here we go. That's not happening ever. So it's a little bit faster too, if I remember correctly. It's much stronger due to its access to items. It can still do the same iron defense body press bullshit that Crowned can. It's just a lot more flexibility. It's a lot more unpredictable when you see it in the field. And it hits stupid hard with close combat and shit like that. So I'm gonna say this will probably be banned within the month too. It's not making me as mad as some of the top dogs in the tier right now, but I think it's very likely it'll be banned sooner rather than later. Next, let's talk about Hoopa Unbound. I'd say there's a world. I don't think it's fast enough. I could be wrong about that, but I just maybe if you talk about Terra Dark popping off and going ham, and it's got good coverage now, and its coverage can only be improved with Terra Sterilization, like maybe there's a world right there, but I don't know. I mean, I've always found Hoopa Pokemon where like I always look at it and I think, wow, this is an excellent Pokemon. It's going to be great, right? And it just barely, cracks OU or it's UUBL or something like that. So I've always like not understand why it's not as good as it is, really. Every time I use it, I'm like, yeah, this is putting in stupid work. I feel like there's a disconnect between me and the public on it. And if that's the case, I'm probably wrong. So, I mean, like, yeah, there's a world. I'm not going to probably go much higher than that. Basco Legion, I think people might be surprised to hear, is way better than we thought, even without last respects. Wave Crash and Swift Swim, it's good, man. Like, we saw Floatzel become a really, like, it wasn't technically OU, but it was a very, very solid Pokemon. It could hang an OU. It could 2-hit KO most Pokemon, because just, like, Wave Crash 120 base power, you multiply that at 50, you just need a functional attack stat, like, over 100, like, you know, be this high to enter the ride, and you can make it work. Great dual coverage, of course, with Ghost moves. Actually, no. I'm full of it. Its Ghost coverage is poor, but I just think Wave Crash is enough. I think it's enough, honestly. Its speed is much lower than Floatzel, which hurts it a little bit, but in Swift Swim, it's still outspeeding freaking everything. And then you can also throw in a curveball if you want of adaptability. I think adaptability Wave Crash is good even outside of the rain. So I could see, I don't think it's going to be banned. Once again, to clarify for the third time, possibly banned means I think it's very unlikely it is, but like, you know, I'm not going to be stunned. And I'd be still pretty stunned if these guys did. I'd be absolutely floored and retire as a YouTuber if these ones did. In this one, I'd be like, okay, wow. I mean, that's wow, but sure. Next, we'll talk about Chiampao. Chiampao, I'm going to go likely banned. My category is a little bit too restrictive here. I'm not positive it's going to be within a month. Maybe it gets another suspect test or something. I don't know. I say this. It's as good as ever, right? I think everybody can agree on that. It's as good as it ever was. Its qualities that made it so broken weren't necessarily meta dependent. You know, I guess you can make the argument that Zamazenta being in the tier, like maybe it's dependent on these guys hanging around, right? Because even then Sacred Sword kind of blows it up. Ugh. Right? Like, so it's the same thing it's ever been. Outrageous offensive typing, outrageous ability to pair with it. It could have a speed tier of 80 and be an extremely good Pokemon because it's just such an effective wall breaker. But its speed tier makes it kind of suffocating too, where it gets in and it gets rolling and you just can't really find an opportunity to swap in easily. Only thing holding it back is it often carries heavy boots to not get hit by Stealth Rocks, or it needs a Stealth Rock remover in order to fully pop off. You know, Terra Dark Crunch just makes it all this discussion even worse. Yeah, I think it's just kind of same shit, new meta, right? So you know, maybe it's 2 months. I'd be surprised, honestly, but I think we're definitely going to see this one gone too. Animaramus, I'm screwing that up. I apologize. I mean, there's a world. I guess it puts it here. It's another Pokemon on the list of, wow, I underrated this on day one. It's just really fast. Its coverage definitely gets the job done. It's a fantastic late game cleaner with that speed tier. 135 base power Moonblast. Don't need to say much there. It's just really, it's got a decent defensive typing too to boot. Just Togekiss defensive typing. Like, what if you took Togekiss, you exchanged its ability for also good ability in Contrary, and you gave it like way more speed and more special attack? Like, yeah, we're partying. Mystical Fire is awesome too. What I've been finding really awesome about it, just like a little tiny thing, but I love when you know that situation where your opponent's Pokemon is at like 8% and they're like, whatever, I'll sack it, I'll just like keep it in whatever. That's a great opportunity to go for a Contrary superpower with this thing. I always carry superpower for coverage on it. It's kind of like an Iron Valiant mini. That's why I still don't think it's gonna be banned, because it's different than Iron Valiant. But in a world where Iron Valiant is unbanned, I'd be really surprised if this thing does get banned, you know? That's kind of my thoughts. It's not as like unpredictable as I just can't see really a world. If Iron Valiant doesn't get banned, then I'd be surprised if this one does. So maybe here, I don't know, putting it below Zapdos just makes me want to tear my hair out in pain, because I think Zapdos is kind of cheeks. Anyways, but sorry, I cut myself like 4 different times there. Contrary superpower is just good coverage to have. That's why I thought of Iron Valiant, where Iron Valiant can often be special and will use close combat just because it's just good coverage. Even though it doesn't have the fighting typing, it's the same goes for Contrary and superpower here. Just like, yeah, if I can get away with it and boosting my stats by like my defense by 1 stage, sure, why not? I'll kill you that way. Anyways, so that's that. Next we got Heatran. I'll throw you in There's a World. That might seem surprising because Heatran just isn't that threatening. Which Terra Grass is so good. like Terra Grass, boom, there goes your water weakness. Boom, there goes your ground weakness. Boom, your grass type with a fire immunity. Like, holy shit. Like, I think Heatran is one of the better beneficiaries of terrestrialization. There's a lot of Pokemon that you go, oh, well, actually, Regidrago is really going to love terrestrialization. It's really better with it. Well, you know what? Every freaking Pokemon is pro terrestrialization. It's a universal mechanic that makes everyone better when they use it. Of course it is. But some are better than others. Some take better advantage of it, and Heatran's definitely in that category. Anybody that's got an immunity that kind of ties into its weaknesses like that, where again, you can go to a grass type, shore up your weaknesses, and still like take even better advantage of Flash Fire. It's pretty fantastic. So yeah, I mean, like there's a world where this thing becomes really oppressive with it. I don't anticipate that world happening, but you know, I'm not going to say there's a 0% chance. Same goes for Samurott Hisui. I'm actually really high on this Pokemon compared to the consensus, I think. I just think Ceaseless Edge always puts in work. I think it's got a better than average defensive typing too. Good bulk. Razor Shell hits really hard. It's got a good move pool in general. It's a good Golden Go answer, right? That's like the Golden Go of it all, I think is very crucial. Like Kleavor, I don't think is getting banned at all. I should probably put him here, honestly. I'd be stunned if Kleavor gets banned. Truly stunned. Same goes for there's a world category is too big right now. That's better, actually. That's actually way better because there was less than a 1% chance with those mons. But Kleavor always puts in work with Stone Axe, but more importantly, I think if we're talking like 2 months from now and Golden Go is still like a top meta restricting Pokemon like we've seen it be so far, then Kleavor will see usage because it's faster. It can Night Slash with Sharpness for an Oko, or at least close to an Oko, and it can defog and like force out the Golden Go. So I think that alone will mean like if we're in a Golden Go meta, Kleavor will be OU because it's a good Golden Go answer. But maybe we're in the case where Golden Go falls off for various reasons. Maybe it's banned. Maybe there's several Golden Go answers like established by that point, and we go, you know what? We don't really need a defogger that can match up against Golden Go. So you're going to go back to your more natural position of UU Kleavor. So that's the thing. I think Kleavor will probably end up OU again just because it's such a good Golden Go answer. But in a similar case, Samurott Hisui once again has an attack that is just amazing because it's good damage and it's always going to get hazards. I think Samurott Hisui is better because you can get multiple layers of spikes. It's a more spammable. It's a dark type attack instead of a rock type attack, which I would prefer personally. But yes, just to circle it all, the conversation all around once again, dark water typing happens to wall Golden Go pretty neatly unless you're running Focus Blast. So it's a great answer if that's the case, and comes in frequently and always has an opportunity to go for that Ceaseless Edge. So like, I guess there's a world where Ceaseless Edges becomes over centralizing and it gets it ban worthy, but I don't really anticipate it at all. Okay, so again, like I honestly, I probably shouldn't have even included this whole category because it's just going to get me in trouble, but whatever. Let's go to Sneasler next. Sneasler, I am going to put... I'm talking about you like a Weavile clone, right? And I think Sneasler's way worse than you. Same stats as Weavile. Not weak to Stealth Rocks. You resist Stealth Rocks. Stab close combat. Yes, you don't have the same good dual typing as Dark Ice. I acknowledge that. But Dire Claw on a Poison Touch Pokemon is maybe the most like uncompetitive move I've ever seen just because it's so RNG based. I think the numbers are like 70 to 80% of the time you get hit by it, you're gonna get some sort of status, which fair is normally poison. I guess that's tenable to an extent. We've never seen anything like that, but sure. But the fact that there's also a high chance of a sleep or a paralysis is just kind of mind-blowing and hair pulling out worthy. I think this is maybe like also one of the more slept on Pokemon right now. I understand why, especially like I think it's worse than Zama. Uncrowned, but it's just so fast and close combat is so strong. Choice Bandit on this thing, it can U-turn and switcheroo. Like here's a good I was against a physically defensive Rotom and I U-turned on it. I did 30% and I poisoned it. What the hell? Like that's insane. Like they went to a decent, like not a great answer, but a decent answer, and their Rotoms are ruined. It's just like half dead. That's unbelievable. If you have Stealth Rocks up, that would have been half the Rotom's health on one turn off of a U-turn. Choice Banded Sneasler. So I think Sneasler's so slept on. I've been using it on all of my teams. I think it's so good. People are much lower on it than me. Like I'm much higher than versus consensus, but I just think that its strengths are going to shine through. It also is a really good unburdened setup sweeper. It's just like a better Howlucha essentially when you consider like Swords Dance and Close Combat, White Herb. It's just better. I think its number one concern is that it is essentially it's essentially walled by the most prevalent Pokemon in the tier Gold and Go. Like it's the inverse of this, where like if you told me Gold and Go is in the meta, this is the best Pokemon in the meta, but it is when it's walled, it's pretty hard walled. But you can still U-turn. Even if you don't status it, like you can still U-turn. You can still switch a route to ruin the Gold and Go and give it a choice band. So I see it as way too strong right now. I think the second best Pokemon in the tier right now is Ursaluna. This thing is ridiculously strong. It's ridiculously fat. Facade can 2-hit KO. Normal Facade, Terra normal Facade can 2-hit KO a defensive Corviknight. There is no answer. It can carry Crunch or Fire Punch even for Gold and Go because it's also walled by an Air Balloon Gold and Go, or even like a Drifloon or whatever, but there is enough coverage moves where if it becomes a huge problem, they can deal with it. In Trick Room, this thing gets even more menacing and even less handleable. And like at worst, even if you're the most pessimistic opinion of Ursaluna possible, it is always going to take 1 or 2 Pokemon out with it because it's so bulky. On the stream the other day, I had a Cinderace high jump kick me and do like 65%. What the hell? So yeah, no, Ursaluna, way too strong. I think it's gonna be gone within the week. It's an absolute menace. Trick Room makes it worse than ever. Yeah, I guess that's the tier list here. Honestly tempted to put you up here just because these two just seem so wrong, but I just think strong electric attacker plus Terra Ice is a powerful enough conversation that it's a different world than these guys. And Thunderstarian, I think, is the best of either of them, so sure, I'll bump it up a tier. You're not going to get banned either. Yeah, once for the 5th time, not likely at all. Let's just make that very clear. But anyways, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I do think that the prevalation, Jesus, that's a hell of a word I made up there. I think the prevalence of what makes all these Pokemon is terrestrialization. Maybe not so with these Pokemon, but with these Pokemon, absolutely it does, right? If we're talking about this one being ban-worthy, it would be because of Terra, right? Even Terra Water, Basculete, Legion, Wave Crash is just that unwallable force. So I think this is all kind of stemming into a larger conversation we'll need to have at some point in the next couple of months about Terra again, give it a suspect test. I think opinions come around on it a lot, and certainly know mine has. So it's interesting to see how it's affected these new Pokemon, and they've been abusing it perhaps better than we've ever seen before. Hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know in the comments if you disagree or think you see something different. Maybe there's another, I think this is probably the most up for debate category for sure, these two. If anyone else thinks there's a world where perhaps Terra, Rock, Arcanine can really do it, then make sure to let me know, and I'll keep you guys posted. Take it easy. See you next time.